In 2012, a Texas father beat his 5-year-old daughter's molester to death. But a grand jury declined to indict the man because they decided that he was justified in using deadly force to protect his daughter. A man who suffered a stroke in 2004 permanently lost the ability to feel sad. A Greek war veteran was once diagnosed with cancer in his mid-60s and was only given 9 months to live. But he went back to those same doctors 25 years later to tell them that he was alive and well. But he soon found out that all of the doctors who diagnosed him were now dead. The man ended up living to the age of 102. Floyd and Violet Hartwig were married for 67 years and died while holding hands. They met in elementary school and exchanged over 100 love letters while Floyd served in World War II. In 2015, their hospice beds were pushed together so that they could spend their final moments holding hands. When Floyd passed away, Violet followed him just 5 hours later. A grieving father had this tombstone designed for his wheelchair-bound son to depict him as free from his earthly burdens. In 1959, police were called into a segregated library in South Carolina because a 9-year-old black boy refused to leave. He later got a PhD in physics from MIT but died in 1986 as one of the astronauts on the Challenger. And the library that once refused to lend him books is now named after him. In 1935, North Carolina, a pregnant Elton Jordan fell into a well and gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Frank. The infant remained underwater for 45 minutes without breathing until both were safely rescued. A Pakistani serial killer was sentenced to be strangled in front of the victims' families, dismembered in 100 pieces, and then burned in acid. The same way he killed over 100 teenage boys. Olympic runner Betty Robinson was involved in a plane crash in 1931 and was wrongfully declared dead upon first being discovered. She spent 7 months in a coma, and it took her 2 years to learn how to walk again. But in 1936, she rejoined the U.S. Olympic relay team and took home the gold medal. Back in 1922, children suffering from diabetic ketoacidosis were kept in large wards. Grieving family members would visit their comatose children and sit by their beds, waiting for their inevitable deaths. But one day, 3 scientists walked into one of these wards and began injecting the children with a new purified extract called insulin. Before they had reached the last comatose patient, the first few that they injected started waking up, and a room of death turned into a place of joy. After surviving a fire, Taka the Shiba Inu is now a therapy dog for burn victims. In 2010, 7-year-old Stella Bernston drowned in some icy water in Sweden. Her body was found 4 hours later by a rescue helicopter and she was taken to the nearest hospital. Despite her body being only 13 degrees Celsius, doctors managed to save Stella by slowly warming her. On 9/11, a guide dog named Roselle led a group of people, including her blind owner, down 78 flights of stairs before the North Tower collapsed. She only stopped briefly at one point to give kisses to a woman who was having a panic attack. These 2 human skeletons were discovered in a bin during an excavation in Iran dating back to 800 BC. They died in what appears to be a loving embrace and have remained that way for 2,800 years. Researchers claim that both skeletons were males based on dental evidence. In 1907, a Mexican railroad worker named Jesus Garcia jumped onto a train loaded with dynamite after realizing that the train was on fire. Knowing that an explosion was inevitable, he reversed the train at full steam for 4 miles until he was clear of the town. Moments afterward, the dynamite exploded, killing Jesus but sparing the town. Alfred Nobel was known for his 300+ patents, including dynamite. When Alfred's brother died in 1888, a local newspaper confused him with Alfred and wrote his obituary. It condemned Alfred for his invention of explosives and portrayed him as a horrible person. Alfred, still being alive, decided to leave a better legacy for himself. So in 1895, he set aside the bulk of his estate to establish the Nobel Prize. Knowing he couldn't swim, running back Joe Delaney died while attempting to save 3 children from drowning in 1983. In 1995, a Russian dog survived a car crash that his owners died in. Despite attempts to adopt him, the dog refused to leave the site of the accident. Rain or shine, he waited for them every day until dying 7 years later. The city informally adopted the dog and dedicated a statue to it called Loyalty. This is a photo of doctors bowing to an 11-year-old boy who died from an aneurysm. They are bowing because by donating his organs, the boy saved the lives of 4 other children. California officer Kevin Briggs has stopped more than 200 people from committing on the Golden Gate Bridge. He is nicknamed the Guardian of the Golden Gate. This is a Vietnam War veteran fulfilling a promise to an old friend, keeping watch one last time. There's a biker group from Arizona who help keep victims of child abuse safe from their abusers while they're being prosecuted. The bikers guard the child's home at night if the abuser's not yet in jail. They also go to court with the child and shield them so that they don't have to look at their abuser. A flight attendant named Sheila Frederick noticed a terrified girl who was accompanied by an older man on a flight. Sheila discreetly told the girl to go to the bathroom, where she left a note asking if she was okay. The girl went to the bathroom and wrote, "I need help," on the note. The police were waiting when the plane landed, and the girl was saved from a human trafficker. This is a photo of a police canine being saluted by officers before entering the vet to be put down. This mother horse lost her baby while in labor. 2 days later, she was given a foal who had lost her mother, and this was the photo taken after they were introduced. A 67-year-old named Dorothy Fletcher once had a heart attack while on a flight. When a stewardess asked if there was a doctor on the flight, 15 people stood up. They happened to be on their way to a cardiology conference and the woman was saved. In 2014, an 11-year-old boy was in the passenger seat when his 79-year-old grandfather collapsed at the wheel. Using skills he picked up from playing Grand Theft Auto, the boy managed to grab the wheel and steer the car to safety until help arrived. After the loss of their newborn daughter, Nathan Steffel and his wife were devastated that they never got to see her without tubes. So Nathan went to Reddit to see if anyone would be willing to Photoshop this image. His request was quickly flooded with drawings, paintings, and support from thousands of Redditors. In 2014, 3-year-old Marina Chikatova survived in the Siberian wilderness for 11 days with no one other than her dog for company. She ate wild berries, drank from a river, and curled up with her dog for warmth. She was saved when her dog managed to find her village and guide rescuers toward her. A pig named Lulu saved her owner's life while the woman was having a heart attack. The pig heard the cries of pain, ran outside into the road, and played dead to stop the traffic. One driver stopped, the pig led him to the trailer, and he called 911 after hearing the woman screaming. This is a photo of 2 surgeons after removing a set of brain tumors during a 32-hour surgery. In 2001, an abused lion cub, tiger cub, and bear cub were all found in a drug dealer's basement. They were all moved to Noah's Ark Sanctuary in Georgia and became inseparable friends for life. In 2012, Anthony Omari took a machete to the face while defending a Kenyan orphanage against attacking thieves. He saved 37 orphans, and his story helped raise over $80,000 for the orphanage. In 1982, the Almeida family lost their pet tortoise Manuela while their house was being renovated. 30 years later, they were cleaning out the attic after their father died and miraculously found Manuela still alive. They think she was able to survive by eating termites in the furniture that their father was hoarding. Just hours after the death of Nintendo CEO Satoru Iwata, a rainbow was seen over the Nintendo headquarters. Fans dubbed it the Rainbow Road to Heaven. In 2019, 30-year-old mother Emma Scholes ran through her burning home to save her 6 children. She ran from room to rescue her kids while suffering from third-degree burns over 93% of her body. For several weeks, she hovered between life and death but eventually survived. When talking about the incident, she said, "I thought I had to get the kids out, then I could die." In 2016, Mark Hamill paid a visit to a dying Star Wars fan in the hospital. He then proceeded to answer every question as Luke Skywalker since the fan could no longer distinguish between reality and fiction. A man named Bill Hast injected himself with snake venom for several years to build up his immunities. He survived nearly 200 venomous snake bites, donated his blood to snake bite victims, and lived to the age of 100. Remember this kid? He was saved by a dog when his parents left him in a garbage bin to die with his umbilical cord still attached. This is what he looks like now. Eitzaz Hassan was only 15 years old when he tackled a suicide bomber who tried entering his school. Sadly, he was killed but succeeded in saving hundreds of his fellow schoolmates. A Brazilian police officer was saved when his Nokia in his back pocket stopped a bullet that was fired at him. In 2015, a Texas father saved his son's life when doctors wrongly declared him brain dead and wanted to take him off life support. He barricaded himself in the hospital with a gun and had a 3-hour standoff with a SWAT team until his son squeezed his hand. The son went on to have a full recovery. During an interview with Stephen Hawking, the cameraman yanked out a cable that set off an alarm and caused Hawking to slump forward. Worried they had killed him, everyone rushed over to find Hawking laughing at his own joke. The alarm was from an office computer losing power. This guy got a tattoo of his daughter's last drawing before she passed away. As of 2006, about 75% of Chinese people didn't know that sharks were killed to make shark fin soup. But now more than 90% of China supports a nationwide ban thanks to activism efforts by people like Yao Ming. Trish Vickers was a blind author who wrote 26 pages of her first novel without realizing that her pen had run out of ink. But local police used forensic equipment to decipher the missing words, and the book was published on the day of her death. Last year, a fan drove 3 hours to deliver a much-needed dose of insulin to rapper Boozy Badass. She refused to accept any payment and instead just wanted a photo with him. On her way home, she stopped at a gas station, bought a scratch-off ticket, and won $10,000. 9 out of 10 people who are stopped from committing don't end up killing themselves at a later date. A team of firefighters from Wiltshire, England saved a group of piglets from a barn fire. 6 months later, the farmer sent them sausages made from the piglets as a thank you gift. The Iron Sheik planned on killing the man who murdered his daughter with a razor blade he was hiding in his mouth during the trial. But his family talked him out of it, and instead, as tribute to his daughter, he quit drugs and got his life back on track. Johnny Depp's daughter nearly died from an E. coli infection and had an extended hospital stay. To thank the hospital, Johnny dressed up as Jack Sparrow and read stories to children for 4 hours. In 2011, a man suffered a heart attack while shopping at a grocery store in Minnesota. Luckily, 20 people took turns performing CPR on him for more than 90 minutes until paramedics arrived. During the California Tubbs fire in 2017, a dog named Odin refused to leave his flock of goats behind while his owners fled to safety. Days later, the owners returned to their decimated property to miraculously find Odin and all of the goats still alive. This woman's husband and son died in a car crash while driving home from an Italian soccer match. She was invited to the next game to discover that all the players and staff were wearing shirts to honor them. In 2017, a 9 weeks pregnant Brazilian woman suffered a stroke and was declared legally dead. Although doctors said the babies had no hope for survival, the brain-dead woman was kept alive for 123 days before delivering a pair of healthy twins. You may remember when Bat Kid Miles Scott saved the city of San Francisco while battling leukemia in 2013. That same boy is now cancer-free. After a 2018 boating accident in Nigeria, a man named Blankson sacrificed his life to save 13 people. By the 14th trip, he was completely exhausted and ended up drowning, but he was the only fatality of the accident. In 1981, a Turkish man shot Pope John Paul II 4 times but didn't kill him. After the Pope recovered, he visited the assassin in prison and gave him his forgiveness. The assassin was soon pardoned at the Pope's request, and 33 years after his crime, he visited Vatican City and laid flowers on the Pope's tomb. Ancient Romans were known to build tombs for their dogs and even gave them epitaphs to remember them by. One such inscription read, "I am in tears while carrying you to your last resting place, as much as I rejoiced when bringing you home with my own hands 15 years ago." Liviu Librescu was a Holocaust survivor who eventually became a professor at Virginia Tech. During the Virginia Tech shooting, he held the door of his classroom, sacrificing his life to save 22 of his 23 students while the shooter continuously shot through the door. In the 1980s, actor Steve Buscemi was a New York City firefighter for 5 years. So when 9/11 happened, he showed up at his old firehouse the very next day to volunteer. For an entire week, he worked 12-hour shifts digging through rubble to find missing firefighters. After a bad cycling accident in 2009, UK man Dan Black became paralyzed from the waist down. So he spent the next 4 years raising $26,000 to pay for a stem cell treatment that might help him walk again. However, upon hearing about a disabled boy who needed a similar surgery but had a better chance of success, he donated all the money to him instead. This man abducted and killed a 10-year-old girl named Katie Coleman in 2005. Unfortunately for him, he was sent to the same prison as Katie's cousin Jared, who tattooed the words Katie's Revenge across the killer's forehead. In 2014, an Australian vet performed a 45-minute surgery on a goldfish named George. His owners were quite attached to him, so they paid to have a tumor removed from his head. After Basma Hamid was badly burned as a child, she eventually tattooed her own face to cover her scars. Now she helps other burn victims by tattooing their scars with pigments that match their skin color. A 10-year-old boy who was dying from cancer wanted to be buried in a casket made of Legos. Luckily, a local funeral home was able to make it happen using 26,000 Lego bricks. A man who suffered multiple strokes tried to teach his cat how to dial 911. Unsure if the training stuck, the man eventually fell from his wheelchair during a seizure. Police received a silent call from the house and arrived to find the man incapacitated with no one around except his cat. A woman battling breast cancer married the love of her life just 18 hours before passing away. The couple had a ceremony at a hospital chapel, and her final moments were nothing short of beautiful. In 1996, Bear Grylls broke his back after falling 16,000 feet due to a torn parachute. Doctors said he would never walk again, but 2 years later he climbed Mount Everest. In 2009, Barry Delaney honored a lifelong pact he made with his best friend who was a British soldier. They agreed that whoever died first, the other had to wear a dress to their funeral. In 1986, a 5-year-old boy fell into a gorilla enclosure and lost consciousness. But to everyone's surprise, a male gorilla named Jumbo stood between the boy and the other gorillas in a protective gesture. He made sure the boy was okay and even rubbed his back. This incident helped create a positive public perception of gorillas. After Heath Ledger died while filming The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell all agreed to star in the film so that it could be completed. Afterwards, they all donated their salaries to Heath Ledger's 4-year-old daughter. After the death of his wife, a man from Argentina planted this guitar-shaped forest so that she could see it from heaven. In 1986, a young Indian flight attendant named Nirja Banat was on a plane when it was hijacked. The terrorists were targeting Americans, so she hid the passports of all 44 Americans on board. Instead of saving herself, she helped the passengers escape and died while shielding 3 children from a hail of gunfire. One of the children on board is now a captain for a major airline and says that Banat was his #1 inspiration. Months before his sudden death, Mythbuster Grant Imahara built a fully animatronic Baby Yoda. After spending 3 months of his personal time designing and programming the robot, he intended on bringing it to hospitals to cheer up sick children. William Kyle Carpenter threw himself in front of a grenade in Afghanistan to shield his best friend. He's the youngest living recipient of the Medal of Honor and has progressed incredibly well in his recovery. This bride's father died 10 years ago and his heart was donated. The man who received the transplant ended up walking her down the aisle. In 2010, Gary Richmond was senselessly beaten into a coma and barely made it through emergency surgery. He woke up with no memory of his wife of 20 years but ended up falling in love with her all over again.